I'm Chris Wildeman. I'm a professor of policy analysis and management at Cornell University. Most of my research has been on the consequences of mass incarceration for families. I'm especially interested in estimating basically how many folks will ever have a family member incarcerated. Historically in my work, I've done that by basically taking data like the survey of inmates in state and federal correctional facilities and contorting them in ways they were never meant to be used to try to estimate how many folks will ever have a parent incarcerated, for instance. About a year ago, or a little over a year ago, I got a call from Felicity Rose, who is the head of criminal justice research, or some parallel kind of title, at Forward US, which is a bipartisan group that was trying to understand sort of criminal justice policy in the US better. And she sort of said hey, you've done a bunch of these kind of, not back of the envelope calculations, but almost, on family member incarceration. Are there things that we're missing? We'd really like to try to get a better estimate out there, or a more complete kind of set of estimates. So I said, you're not missing anything. There's not some brilliant kind of study that's out there that you just haven't seen, or there's not some data set that would really let us estimate this well. And so she, asked me if I would have interest in sort of assembling a team of academics to work with Forward to generate those estimates using a new data set. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that there are some limitations of what we knew in terms of the family history of incarceration before this survey we designed, which is called the Family History of Incarceration Survey, or FAMHIS. So before the FAMHIS, we had a couple different types of estimates of family member incarceration. So we had a lot of things that were good for estimating associational relationships, but we didn't have any data that were really prepared to help us get sort of a good nationally representative estimate of how many folks had ever experienced this. We worked with NORC at the University of Chicago, which is a big polling firm. The basic idea behind the AmeriSpeaks panel is that you can get a nationally representative estimate of folks who speak English or Spanish. They deal with undercounts of historically marginalized populations, especially folks who don't have a lot of economic resources, by offering people a computer and internet service if they would like to complete the survey on the computer and they don't have access to a computer or to the internet. Even though there are certainly populations that are undercounted because they're not in our sampling frame, so current prisoners aren't in our sampling frame, and so certainly the estimate is downwardly biased a bit as a result of that. We think that the AmeriSpeaks panel does an exceptionally good job of making the data as nationally representative as is realistic. Everything about the study is about this one really specific estimate, right? This 45% estimate that we came up with is really the one thing that we were shooting for. Everything else is kind of gravy. And so we're just really lucky to work with NORC and have them help us work through various iterations of the question and help us spot things that could be problematic. The real focus of the study was on immediate family, and we're defining immediate family as parents, siblings, anyone you've had a child with, your own children, and your current romantic partner. And we're counting foster, adoptive, step, and biological family members within that group. One of the things that's important to know about the survey, which, as I mentioned in the presentation, is now publicly available through the Roper website. So you can just Google, FAMHIS, Roper, or whatever other search terms, and something will come up. But one of the things that we think is nice about the immediate family definition is that if you don't think current romantic partner should count in the immediate family definition if you're interested more in family of origin. We have a specific question down the road about which family members actually experience the event. And so if you want, you can remove that from your estimate and say, I'm instead doing a family of origin estimate. That's kind of the core of the immediate family member question. We also have an extended family member question, and what we say there essentially is thinking about a family member that you feel close to who wasn't covered under this definition of immediate family that we just gave you. Is there anybody who's experienced incarceration for at least a day? And then we have a bunch of different specific folks, so it could be cousins, it could be aunts and uncles, it could be godparents, but then we also have like an other kind of residual category that folks can fill in. You know, again, if there are components of that folks who want to go and do more research on this don't think should be included in that estimate, it's easy enough just to take those people out with the second stage kind of question. So we've tried to situate the data where we have a specific idea of what we're trying to measure in terms of immediate and extended family, but if that doesn't mesh with the way people want to define it themselves, then they can essentially change the question. I mean, I think the most surprising thing in some ways was just how high the national estimate was. 45% of American adults have ever had a family member incarcerated for at least a day. People who have been working in this criminal justice and family space for a while on the research team. I mean, there are a bunch of folks on the research team where like their entire research careers are based on family member incarceration work, and we were all shocked that it was 45%. We talked to other people who work in the field too about what they thought the estimate would be, and everybody thought that it was going to be closer to like 25%. And that was something that was really surprising both to our whole research team and also to experts working in the area. So I think that was a really surprising finding. You know, something that wasn't all that surprising was that it was unequally distributed by race and class. And so African Americans had especially high cumulative prevalences of immediate family member incarceration. So about 3 in 5 African American adults had ever had an immediate family member incarcerated. I mean, I think 2 other findings that were surprising were first that just how ubiquitous family member incarceration or immediate family member incarceration was. If you think about any one cut you could do for a subgroup, and so that could be like by race, or that could be by level of educational attainment, or that could be by income decile, any of those different ways. So no matter which way you cut the data, at least 30% of any given group had experienced immediate family member incarceration. I think that was a surprising finding, but I think also really strengthened our conclusion that mass incarceration is this uniquely American phenomenon that, of course, incarceration is concentrated among specific subpopulations, but it's actually an issue that we all wrestle with as a society. So that was surprising. And then the final kind of thing that we were surprised by is that the most prevalent kind of immediate family member incarceration was sibling incarceration. And as academics, we were surprised because there's almost no research on the effects of sibling incarceration, but there's so much on parental incarceration and an increasing amount on romantic partner sort of incarceration. And so that was sort of another surprising thing about the study. I mean, one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is now that the data are out there in the public domain, I'm looking forward to seeing what other people come up with that would have been so surprising to us that we wouldn't have even thought about it. I mean, I think that'll be sort of a fun second stage of seeing what happens with the data.